So I don't know how we ever did this not weekly. The weekly podcast, there's so much to talk about at the moment, and we could do another half hour today. Last week's half hours had quite a few views on YouTube. It's going all right, isn't it?
Yes, I think, as you say, it's been a busy few weeks.
When is it not a busy week in Royal Land?
I know, and this week has been equally as busy.
So if you're watching this on YouTube, as many of you are, and thank you for that, then you can also subscribe to us, the Apple podcast, the Spotify podcast, however you get your favourite podcasts. Just search ITV Royal Rota on that, and then you can listen to us on the go. You can have us in your ear when you're doing whatever it is you do on a Saturday, Sunday or Monday. Anyway, we come out every Friday now that we're weekly. And what is one of the things we do?
The Robinson's Royal Rundown.
Robinson's Royal Rundown.
Yeah, one of us will get it right.
Yes, exactly. And you're also wearing green because we've just got back from...
I am wearing green.
Exactly, just like the Duchess of Cambridge.
Just like I planned it. I wish I was that organised.
Plenty of green dresses, and I even made a social media post this week about fashion, which is a first. We'll come on to that later. But anyway, the Royal Rundown from the Robinson.
So this week, as you say, we've been in Ireland with the Cambridges. That was their first official visit to Ireland, and they had a 3-day visit there with one very significant speech from Prince William.
Yes, when he touched not only on the Troubles, but also on Brexit.
And our relationship going forward post-Brexit.
Over the past 2 days, Catherine and I have seen for ourselves why Ireland is a country looked upon with such envy. As we stood on the cliffs at Howth and looked across the Irish Sea, a mere 50 miles to the British coastline, it was easy to see why so many people find the lure of this beautiful country so difficult to resist. And beyond the breathtaking landscapes, we have received such wonderful hospitality and friendship from all those we have met. Ladies and gentlemen, legal treaties are vital in underpinning the relationships between states. But relationships between people are equally, if not more, essential, especially between the people of our two countries, whose lives, histories, and futures are so deeply intertwined. I am confident that friendship, understanding, and a shared vision for a peaceful and prosperous future will ensure that the unique and precious bond between our people is not broken.
So we've been with them, and while we've been away, Prince Harry has been in the UK still after he went to Edinburgh last week, and he had a meeting with his granny at the weekend, didn't he?
A meeting or a Sunday lunch with granny?
So I think Sunday lunch with granny. Yeah. Sunday lunch with granny.
During which they had a chat about all things going on at the moment.
And Meghan is also now back in the country.
She's back.
And they have attended their first joint engagement together since that bombshell announcement that they intended to step back as senior royals.
And as we haven't seen Meghan since the middle of January,
should
we explain who she is? Duchess of Sussex, wife of Prince Harry. People don't really talk about her much these days.
Yeah.
Oh, if only that were true. Yes.
Yep. So when then we can't get through this without talking about my favourite photo of the week, which is Charles and Camilla on a bus.
Charles and Camilla on a bus. I'm really looking forward to showing you those pictures because they are pretty amazing. Or if you can't see them because you're podcasting this, then you can find it on our social media pages. On Instagram, that is at ITV News Royals. On Twitter, you can follow me or Lizzie at ChrisShipITV and at
Lizzie ITV.
Right, so let's start with Harry and Meghan back in the country. At the Endeavour Awards, it was on Thursday night, both of them there. We haven't seen Meghan in the UK since the day before they made their dramatic announcement that they were leaving the royal family. Here's some pictures of Harry and Meghan at the Endeavour Awards. So you probably noticed the odd flash bulb or two, just as it was in 2017 when she arrived. Then she was not even Harry's wife; she was his fiancée at the Endeavour Awards.
Fiancée in the Endeavour Awards in 2017.
Last year they came to the Endeavour Awards and she was heavily pregnant.
She was, yes.
This year at the Endeavour Awards, she was on her way out of the royal family.
On her way out, I know, it's amazing to think 2 years later that that's it. That we're in the final run of engagements as them as working members of the family.
5 engagements coming up, or this weekend, effectively. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Monday we think that's it. See you later. They're off.
Well, as it stands, the last scheduled engagement we have for them is Commonwealth Day, which is the service at Westminster Abbey, which they will both attend with other members of the family, which is going to be fascinating.
Oh, how we will look at the body language of all the different members of the royal family. Let me just turn off this phone because it is the News at 10 programme editor obviously wanting to speak to me about one of the things they want me to do. Right, let's have a chat down at the Endeavour Awards then. Me and Lizzie went there. We were there in 2017. We were there in 2018. Actually, it's wrong, isn't it? We were there in 2018, we were there in 2019, and we were also there for this year's Endeavour Awards with Harry and Meghan. Omid Scobie from ABC News and Harper's Bazaar. How are you?
Good, good. I think we're all very excited to have them back.
Finally, we've been talking about it for long enough, so we found a glamorous corner in which to chat to you. I mean, the pictures tonight were quite phenomenal. I mean, there is one particular image, isn't there, of Harry and Meghan with the umbrella in the rain.
Yeah, the photographer Sami Hussein really captured the moment. I think that really sort of was Harry and Meghan's announcement to the world that they're sort of back, ready to do the sort of final slew of engagements before seeing this all off for good.
And kind of saying we're okay. Do you know, we've been away. We haven't seen Meghan really since that Canada House event, which was the day before they announced that they were off.
Yeah.
So there was so much interest last night. I mean, the storm of flashbulbs on them was quite something, wasn't it?
Yeah, we don't often see that many photographers at royal engagements unless it's around a big news event.
Yeah.
And of course, this was really, it's one of the last times we see them as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex working royals. And I think this was their way of sort of showing the world that they're fine, that there's a weight off their shoulders, that we're sort of entering a new chapter.
They look pretty relaxed. So I was on the rota last night, so we were with them in the sort of reception area where they were doing their talking. Meghan, correct me if I'm wrong, she was wearing Victoria Beckham?
I believe so,
right?
yes.
Looking very, calm, very happy.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're without Archie. They didn't bring him with them, but
Archie stays back in Canada for a little while. And, this is a business trip, so I think people who are surprised that he's not here, you don't bring your kid to work.
Yeah,
so it's a quick in and out for them. And I think, as you've mentioned, Meghan looking really polished. I think a lot of thought went into that moment outside the sort of entrance to Mansion House because, of course, they knew that the entire world would have been watching. And of course, now that photo almost sort of represents them stepping into this new space.
Their new world. It was wet outside.
My feet are still somewhat soggy.
It didn't stop that pen being full of photographers. There was, there was cheers. There was a solitary boo at the very beginning. We don't know if it was directed at them or just a random passerby or whatever else, but it happened. We heard it, but just one.
There was a boo. I mean, listen, this is a couple that have got somewhat sort of polarised fan base here in the UK. I mean, you only need to look on social media. But I wouldn't let that represent how people outside the venue are feeling. I mean, we heard a lot of I love yous to Meghan. She turned around and waved to the fans. I think some people questioned if she was looking at the photographers. She was actually looking at the fans to sort of acknowledge them before going in. And I know that the couple have been really appreciative of how much support they've had in recent months. They've received a lot of letters. They have been reading them all. So, it's a...
And actually, when they left, there was some chanting of Harry. So, I mean, look, one solitary boo, we shouldn't focus on it, but we all heard it because we were there. But obviously, part of the reason she looked so great was that she's brought her stylist with her.
Yeah, listen, I mean, if the whole world is watching and analysing every move and look and whatnot, you're going to want to look your best. And her close friend, Daniel Martin, a makeup artist, is over here in London. We've already seen some photos of him. He flew in especially for this and some other work. So I think also great for her to have support, moral support. We know that Daniel's been there throughout the entire process with her. He was there the day before she married Harry, and now that she's sort of entering a new phase, he's sort of there by her side as well.
And I thought in the speeches as well, there's a couple of things that stood out for me. I mean, Meghan went up there, did it off, without notes, as she always does, and does so eloquently as well, but mentioned about choosing the winner, to use her words, all the way in Canada. Almost to say that we were all the way over there, we were still choosing, but sort of just mentioned, I don't know why, but the geographical distance really between the UK and Canada.
It's very nice to be back. It's the third year that I have the incredible fortune of joining my husband here, and as you all know and can feel, it is just the most inspiring space. So I will say, when we were watching the videos all the way in Canada, we had the same moment as we do each year, which is, how are you going to choose?
I mean, I think I was actually wondering where they were going to judge this from, because in the past they'd done sort of a panel session at Kensington Palace or wherever, and I'd been asking the palace for a while. I think mentioning Canada, I don't think there was a real sort of intent there, but it was a way of sort of reminding us all that whilst they're over there, they aren't just sort of hiding away from the press, they're working, and that continues, wherever they are.
Yeah, the work still goes on. And I thought in Harry's speech, when he mentioned it, he was clearly talking about the military, but you could almost use the words to describe his own position at the moment. He says, even after you leave, brackets the military, you're still serving. And I took that to mean, well, you could easily translate that to his current situation. Yes, he's leaving, he still wants to serve his grandmother.
Well, I feel incredibly lucky to be able to count myself as one of you, and I'm deeply proud to have served among you as Captain Wales. A lot of you tonight have told me you have my back. Well, I'm also here to tell you I've always got yours.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of thought goes into these speeches, and there's no coincidences. I was in the room as well when he was giving that speech, and quite a few people sort of looked at each other at that moment because they knew that it had a sort of a double meaning, and of course that is on the front of his mind at the moment.
And that's kind of the final straight now until Monday, Commonwealth Day, and then it's all over.
Yeah, it's sort of a mixed bag of engagements. Obviously, you've got something for Meghan for Women's Day. Harry's got an engagement with Lewis Hamilton, and then, of course, everyone will be watching them at the Commonwealth Day service.
And the body language and everything.
Yeah, I mean, that was already sort of under huge analysis last year. Of course, there is that moment where they're still waiting for the Queen to arrive, and of course, the Sussexes come first, and the Cambridges, and everyone is sort of milling around Westminster Abbey for a while before going in. So it will be interesting.
We'll all be watching. Omid, thank you. So Prince Harry and Meghan at the Endeavour Awards, and Harry's also been meeting Lewis Hamilton, the racing driver Lewis Hamilton, at Silverstone. You obviously would expect that we were there too, and we'll talk about that a bit later on. But before we get on to Harry and Meghan, should we talk about all things on the Emerald Isle, the island of Ireland?
Cambridge
tour.
We'll go away from the Sussexes into the Cambridges.
Which actually, so to explain to people that we had to pull off it a day early because there was no other physical way of travelling back from Ireland to cover the Harry and Meghan event at the Endeavour Awards. But there was some pretty meaty stuff in Ireland, wasn't there?
There was. It was a 3-day visit. There were 2 speeches from Prince William. One, as we said earlier, significant speech, and one that they sort of billed more as remarks, which was a bit more light-hearted and a bit jokier, and William saying it's not often he follows his grandmother, the Queen, to a pub, because they were at the Guinness Storehouse in Dublin. So the first day of the trip was very much focused around Dublin, and it was very official, so it was meetings with the president, the meeting with the Taoiseach, reception in the evening, and then day 2 was much more out and about, meeting sort of communities and seeing projects that they have a interest in, mental health.
So should we have a listen to that joke that William made about Granny? So he's at the Guinness factory. I mean, who wouldn't go to the Guinness factory? We're in Dublin, sadly. We had to go as well. And this is the joke that he made, referencing effectively his grandmother's visit to Ireland, that historic visit to Ireland she made in 2011. But listen to the joke he made about following Granny to the pub.
Ladies and gentlemen, Agwini Ushna. Catherine and I are delighted to be here tonight, and we're both very grateful to Robin for his very generous words. Ireland is a country that we've both heard so much about, so we're really excited to be here with you to see it firsthand for ourselves. In coming to the Guinness Storehouse, we are retracing the footsteps of my grandmother, who was shown how to pour the perfect pint here in 2011. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, it's not often that I find myself following the Queen to a pub. But I am looking forward to testing for myself the theory that Guinness tastes even better in Ireland than overseas. Slauncher.
So that was a pretty enjoyable visit. I mean, that factory looked amazing. I could have stayed there all day.
They also, on the first day, went to the Garden of Remembrance, which is where the Queen also went in 2011.
Now, I mean, I honestly thought this was fascinating. So here we have a Garden of Remembrance in the centre of Dublin, which is dedicated to those who gave their lives fighting for Irish independence, in other words, fighting against the British Crown, and you've got a future British king standing in the Garden of Remembrance with the Irish military playing the British national anthem. I mean, I mean, it doesn't get much heavier than that.
No, so they played the British national anthem on arrival when the Duke and Duchess arrived, and then the Irish national anthem was also played when we were there. But yeah, I mean, it was a very significant and poignant visit.
And actually, I put up on Twitter, I put up the video of them playing the national anthem, and there were quite a few, how do we put this, angry comments underneath from people who thought that it was disgusting, insulting, lots of other words that they use that I won't even express on this podcast, because they found that too much, having a member of the British royal family inside the Garden of Remembrance, where they remember the dead fighting for Irish independence.
Yeah, you were showing me some of those comments earlier. But Kate and William also, when they were there, they laid a wreath, didn't they, with a little message talking about how they hoped that despite recent histories that we could continue to work towards a brighter future together.
Yes, it was, and I mean we have a picture of that on our social media channels as well. In fact, I'm just trying to find it now, which was quite it was a handwritten note, wasn't it, on that wreath? And here we are. And I thought that was quite a poignant message that they put on there from William and Catherine about about looking back as well as looking forward, and they bowed their heads. We should be clear as well, they also played the Irish national anthem.
Yep.
They were there at the invitation of the Irish government and all the rest of it. But a lot of historical reminders for people of the Easter uprising in Dublin in 1916, how that ultimately led to the Irish Free State in 1922. But William also, didn't he, speak about the Troubles, the 3 decades of violence of the Troubles and all the lives that were lost on both sides.
Yeah, he did talk about that in his sort of big main speech on the second evening. He talked about remembering seeing the Troubles that took place, which affected many people across the UK and Ireland, and he described going to that Garden of Remembrance with Kate as a very profound moment.
Yeah, I think it was. And also in that speech that he gave on day 2, he spoke about Britain leaving the EU. Yeah. The significance of that. I mean, if you're listening to this and you're not in the UK or in Ireland, you might know or not know that the United Kingdom and Ireland share a land border between the Irish Republic and Northern Ireland, and that is the only land border that the UK has with the rest of the EU. Now, we're out of the EU now. Ireland is still in the EU, and it's a very difficult subject, and we weren't really expecting William to talk about it.
No, and this visit was quite significant because it was the first royal visit we've had post-Brexit, a royal couple going to the EU. But yes, I think our ears all pricked up when we heard in the speech when he says about the changing relationship between the UK and the EU. It's not often that royals talk that explicitly about Brexit, is it?
No, absolutely. And I thought, normally they stay well clear of anything political. Now, we weren't able to get to the west coast of Ireland, to the beautiful city of Galway.
We should just say about that speech and talking about the relationship with the EU is that he did say in the speech that my family is determined to continue playing its part in protecting that bond between our countries.
Yeah. So kind of committing the
royal family
to it. No, which is kind of what they do, which is kind of that sort of, okay, we've left the EU, we don't really get involved in politics, but we're still your neighbour, we are still here, and it was like committing the rest of his family to strengthening that bond. And you would expect that Prince Charles, William's father, will be there at some point this year as well, because he goes pretty often. So we couldn't go to Galway, which is a shame.
Such a shame, because everyone that we met said it was amazing, and it's the European Capital of Culture for 2020, which is one of the reasons they went there today.
And on the west coast of Ireland, where I'm told the Guinness is very good and the music is very good. And there were some pictures from Kensington Palace of William and Kate in the pub. I mean, Kate also had a go at hurling.
But my favourite video is William juggling with not 2 but 3 balls.
And he did
quite impressive. So really impressive.
Kate and the hurling and William and the juggling, and they did okay.
Yeah, and they went for a walkabout, and they were in a traditional Irish pub, so they were very much out sort of seeing people and traditional Irish sports, traditional Irish pubs. It looked like a great visit, and it was a shame to miss it.
And you mentioned walkabouts, and there were plenty of crowds in Galway to see them. The trouble with walkabouts is you end up touching lots of people's hands.
Yeah.
One of the things we're all told not to do at the moment because of the coronavirus is not to touch people's hands, and therefore, there's a couple of things on coronavirus, isn't there? William's sort of kind of joked about it. Camilla's made a joke about it as well. The Queen wore some gloves this week to engagement
Investiture.
inside
Yeah.
an investiture. So it's and Prince of Wales is going to Bosnia where they've had their first cases of coronavirus. So okay, they're royal, but they ain't immune from this in the same way that barely no one in the world is immune from coronavirus.
Yeah, and we understand from the visit that they have sought advice, and that as it currently stands, taking advice from Public Health England, that they should seek advice, but they can carry on business as usual. So they're obviously keeping an eye on it, and will take advice and
still practicing the hand washing that we're all meant to be doing much more.
Yeah, I mean, William had a
fastidiously.
conversation with a paramedic, didn't he, saying, if we're supposed to stop, do tell us.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And that's he kind of joked about, are we super spreaders? What did he say? He mentioned something about the royal family because they meet so many people. And he spoke to this paramedic as well about, if someone says, I think I've got coronavirus, no, you haven't, you've just got a cough. And
Yeah.
he made a bit of a joke about it. But, I mean, it's not really the subject to joke about. I mean, it's a very serious situation. But stepping away from Ireland momentarily, there is a great picture, isn't there, of Camilla climbing into a one-man air raid shelter
Yeah.
in the Transport Museum
the London
Covent Garden
Transport
in
Museum,
London, where she said, jokingly,
that she's going, that was her self-isolating.
I'm going to self-isolate.
I mean, the Duchess of Cornwall has a great sense of humour, as we know, and I think we should just take it as that she was just having a bit of a joke.
Yes, I'm sure some people might have taken offence to that, but actually, when I put that up on my Twitter, it seemed to go down very well indeed. I think we all need a little bit of light relief from what is a very serious story at the moment. The Bosnia trip, I'm told, is not being cancelled or amended just because they've had the first cases of coronavirus.
Yeah,
there.
and I mean, there's cases in the UK. There were cases in Ireland. I think they're taking advice, but. They're not going into sort of what's described as Category 1 areas where there's sort of, a real problem. But we'll just have to see.
Mm. Yeah, we'll have to see, and and then what do we make of the Queen and her gloves?
Well, so the Queen wore gloves to an investiture, didn't she, at the palace this week? And a lot of
The Queen
people.
wears gloves a lot, though.
The Queen does wear gloves a lot,
Yes. And so we asked Buckingham Palace about it.
We did.
And we were given a response. But it is quite unusual when we were speaking to people here who log the pictures of the Queen and measure the royal family very often. They say they've never actually seen the Queen wear gloves at an investiture before.
But she's also had audiences this week where she hasn't been wearing gloves post that investiture. So I think the palace certainly weren't commenting that she was doing it because of coronavirus.
Yeah. And it's not unusual for the Queen to wear gloves, said the palace, on a public engagement, and that's basically all they would say on the matter.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Clearly they didn't want to talk too much about that. Quick note on World Book Day, because I thought there was a really great comment from Camilla, who was at a primary school, and she was just... as the patron of the National Literacy Trust, she was just trying to get people to read. There's obviously
she's really passionate about this, actually. Of
course, and a lot of her stuff is about
reading.
literacy, isn't it? And there was a little line from her speech jumped out at me. When I was young, she said, which was about 100 years ago, I was lucky enough to have a father who read to us every night, and we were transported to a myriad of exciting new adventures. I read to my children and now my grandchildren, although she says nowadays they tend to read to me. But books can take you anywhere. You can play Quidditch with Harry Potter, or, and I like this bit, if you're like me, you can become a gangster granny and plot to steal the crown jewels. Referring herself to the third person as gangster granny, I thought was quite nice.
Yeah, that's a lovely quote. I mean, it's one of her big causes. She's very, very passionate about literature and children reading and children being read to. And she always takes a huge interest in this. So.
Shall we talk about her Sunday lunch?
Sunday lunch, yes.
Sunday lunch. Now, there's no pictures to show of this because there were no pictures taken of this, but this is Sunday lunch between the Queen and one of her grandchildren.
Yep, Prince Harry, who obviously lives at Frogmore Cottage in Windsor, popped over to see Granny, who was also in Windsor and not a million miles away.
And we don't know exactly what they talk about, but we were told that Harry and Granny wanted to have a kind of heart-to-heart, kind of clear the air, kind of discuss things away from other courtiers, away from their advisors, and just sort of speak what was called grandson to granny.
Yeah, I think they'd have quite a lot to talk about after the last few months.
Because Harry hasn't seen the Queen since the Sandringham Summit, so-called.
Summit back in January, so quite a while ago.
Yeah, and there was a lot of discussion. I mean, they had a long chat on our breakfast show, Good Morning Britain, this week about leaving Archie behind, Archie not seeing the Queen. Should they have brought Archie over? Should Archie stay in Canada? What about coronavirus and all the rest of it? I mean, I suppose the sad fact is the Queen hasn't seen her newest great-grandchild very much.
No, I mean, well, Archie has been, as we understand, away in Canada since they took their extended break, which started in November. He stayed over there when they came back in January to do that appearance at Canada House, and then Meghan went straight back over to him, and he's not coming over this time. But, you know, from their point of view, they could argue that she's probably only here for 5 days a week, and bringing a small child all that way with jet lag and time zones, maybe they would prefer to keep him there.
Yeah. Yeah, and so we think that we're going to have events over the weekend. We're going to have this big Commonwealth Day service on Monday, and that's the last time we're going to see Harry and Meghan. It's kind of like what we're in at the moment. It is the sort of final pages of the final chapter of the book that is Harry and Meghan as senior royals.
Well, yes. Yeah, I don't think it's the final chapter of the book, though.
No, final chapter of the book of them as senior royals, and then we start a new book.
Maybe a new book,
yeah,
yes.
New book, which is Harry and Meghan from the 1st of April 2020, which is...
Yeah, I mean, they could technically do some more engagements between Monday and the end of March, but there's nothing listed, is there? That does seem to be it. The Commonwealth Day with the rest of the family seems to be their last final engagement.
Most people in the palace that we speak to seem to be saying, we don't. There isn't going to be anything else. I mean, okay, they don't officially leave until the 31st of March, but nor are we expecting to see them, which makes this sort of string of engagements over this weekend really very important. And one of the other engagements happened at a very famous racetrack in the middle of England called Silverstone, where Harry was with a driver known as Lewis Hamilton. So welcome to Silverstone Experience at Silverstone, and Russell from the Mirror, you had the rotor job here.
I did.
How was it?
It's spectacular. I didn't know what to expect because...
This is spectacular, or Harry was spectacular?
I think this is more spectacular, to be honest. But he was in a good mood with Lewis Hamilton. This used to be an old World War II hangar.
In here, right.
And I wasn't here when they did the dig a couple of years ago.
You weren't here in World War II?
I wasn't. I mean, I look at it at the moment.
Yeah, of course.
So they created this project 2 years ago. Harry became a patron of the Silverstone Heritage Experience.
Right. Which is what all this is.
And they've created this.
It's pretty impressive.
It is really impressive, actually.
Damon Hill showed me this car earlier, which over here is I think... He was
his,
Williams, wasn't he?
That's his car from '94. You've just
1994, and it was Princess Diana who he met when he won that year.
So there's royal connections all over the place.
But what he said to me, Lewis Hamilton's won it 6 times, I only won it once. And I said, well, not really only. I mean, it's still a pretty big achievement.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool. Yeah. Lewis was really cool. I mean, he was
so Harry and Lewis turned up, because I wasn't here at the beginning, in an electric Mercedes.
Yes,
at
a Maybach, which is very, very
at a very sedate pace.
Yes,
there were no handbrake.
We were expecting, something out of the Sweeney or something, but no, it was quite sedate turning up.
Right.
And they had a little tour. Yeah. I mean, this is open to the public from now, I suppose, but we are sort of the honoured guests of...
Therein lies a story, because didn't Harry say it's been open since October? That's what I found out from the boss here earlier.
Right.
So Harry then made that sort of joke, nothing quite like...
Opening somewhere that's already open.
Correct.
I think it's been like a soft launch, so they've had like groups of school kids in here, sort of testing out the interactive stuff and what have you, some of the patrons or whatever. Yeah. There's actually really lovely...
They put it on the plaque, Prince Harry opened this, brackets, although it
was already opened. There was actually a really nice moment. There was a lady called Lady Watson who used to be a racing driver back in the 60s, and she had a Polish dressmaker make her outfit.
Right.
They're moving a Formula 1 car now.
That's the noise, if you can hear a noise behind you.
And Harry was making some joke about Lewis could break even more records
Whose is this car going past us at the moment?
This is Lewis Hamilton's Formula One car, or
This is,
one
isn't
of
it?
them, number 44. So there's one hanging up, being suspended from the ceiling right as you come in.
It's almost as noisy moving it like this as it is being on the racetrack.
I mean,
we
listen,
kind of-
this place is
Yeah.
spectacular, but anyone, whether you're a racing fan or not, you would
If
love
you're
it.
watching on YouTube as opposed to listening on the podcast, then you can actually see this car. They're trying to get it. They're actually trying to get it through a very narrow gap between that display and the. Look, you can lift it up.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
Must have
made that
taken the
fiberglass,
internet.
haven't it?
Yeah.
They're pretty,
Well, there it goes.
Here we go.
Quietly or otherwise. No, not quietly. So, I suppose one final point, Russell. I mean, this could well be the last thing that Harry ever opens. In the way it's the Royals open stuff,
I know.
like hospitals and museums, this could be the last one.
Well, it's certainly the
Pretty
last
much.
time we might not
That's
see
what we
him
know
for a
of.
while. I mean,
Yeah.
they're going to do Commonwealth Day on Monday. They're still moving this car, but when are we going to see him next? I mean, we won't be invited. I mean, this is it's a massive change, isn't it?
Yes, they won't be inviting us to whatever they're doing next, unless they're doing something in Canada, and I'm sure we'll welcome, if they're watching, we'll welcome an invitation to Canada.
I fancy going over to Vancouver. I'm sure it's a very nice.
But yes,
place.
so after Commonwealth Day, we're pretty confident that there's going to be no other engagements up until the big change on the 31st of
Absolutely,
March,
yeah.
and that's kind of them done.
I mean, they've said they're going to come back and do stuff with their
London
patronages.
Marathon.
Yesterday at the
Yeah.
Endeavour Awards, Harry was saying, I'm still here for you guys. So
Yeah.
I imagine we're going to see him doing
Yeah,
the
yeah.
military stuff that he loves. Whether we're going to see Meghan back over these shores, I'm not too sure. It's a very much a case of wait and see, isn't it?
We might not ever see Meghan in the UK for some considerable time.
Again, this will work with her
Yeah.
patronages, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but it might sort of be in secret, and then you'll find out about it on social media,
Well-
on the new Sussex Royal.
Well, not Sussex Royal. 'cause they
Oh,
can't
not
call it
Sussex Royal,
so,
exactly. Yeah.
so-
Sussex
Right.
Regal, maybe. You never know.
Nice to see you. Thank you, Russell.
So from one mode of transport, a fast mode of transport known as a Formula One racing car, to a much slower form of transport, which is an all-electric red double-decker London bus.
That travelled from Clarence House to the London Transport Museum with a famous couple.
Now, I absolutely love that. There's something about this picture I love. There was a bus stop with Charles and Camilla with their umbrellas, because naturally, being London in March, it's raining, as it always rains in London in March. They're waiting for a London bus at a bus stop, which is sort of, obviously, it wasn't a normal bus, it was a special one for them and all the rest of it. But they got on, they went upstairs as well, which, you know,
There's this lovely
both
picture
in their
of Camilla
70s.
waving through the sort of rainy glass.
Yes, the
it was
steam.
just a lovely,
rainy glass.
lovely picture.
And the whole thing was because they were marking 20 years of Transport for London,
Yeah.
which is the organisation that runs all the trains, tubes, and buses in London.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I just thought these pictures were great.
They were brilliant. They were really, just something really ordinary about Charles and Camilla being
Yeah.
on a bus, and they, she sort of.
I mean, we must be clear, they don't get the bus. I mean, but maybe,
No.
maybe they might start. I mean, Prince Charles does have an electric car, so maybe the next thing he'll do is start moving about
I think
London.
they used an
on
Oyster
electric
card.
bus. And actually, there's some really good pictures that the royal family then put up on its social media pages, which is the Queen when she became the first monarch to
Yeah.
ever travel on a tube train. I think she opened the Victoria line, which was the first new line built in the 60s, I forget when, but the pictures of the Queen going down
Yeah.
the escalator and putting a ticket through the ticket barrier were quite good as well. But and it was at the London Transport Museum where Camilla did her one-man air raid.
Oh yeah,
one-man
the
shelter.
one-man
where she
shelter,
made the
self-isolating joke.
coronavirus.
Yes.
Anyway, so if you haven't seen those pictures, or you can't see them on here because you're listening to this podcast, just hop on yet again to our social media pages. If you're not on them already, then you should be at ITV News Royals on Instagram. So Robinson's Royal.
We got through an
Recap, rundown.
entire episode without you talking about a flag.
We have
Incredible.
actually. Do you want me to talk about?
No,
I could talk about Irish flags.
begging
it was
you-
flying in
begging
Ireland.
you
We
not
could
to.
talk about, well, actually,
Oh, no.
there was something I can talk about.
Okay.
Flags. I know you-
I'm so sorry.
There were some, and very seriously, there were some Union flags flying in Galway. I think the day before William and Kate got there, and I noticed on Twitter that had upset quite a lot of people. What is that flag doing flying in our
Yes.
country? So yes, you mentioned flags. There's always a flag story.
A flag
to be
fact.
had, and I will not
Endeavour
give
to to have one every week.
We could change the name of this podcast to the
It's one way to kill off listeners, I suppose.
the Royal Podcast on Flags. No.
So
Right,
coming
go.
up
Coming
next
up
week.
this week.
Well, so Saturday, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are back out again. They're at the Mountbatten Festival of Music.
Saturday, yeah.
And Prince Harry is there in his role as Captain General of the Royal Marines.
His soon-to-be relinquished role,
Yeah.
or temporarily relinquished. It's odd,
Yeah.
isn't it? Because he's handing back or giving up the title of Captain General of the Royal
An
Marines,
official
which
military-
his grandfather, Duke of Edinburgh, had for millions of years.
Yeah.
But they're not replacing him while the transition period's going on.
Yeah, that was one of the official military roles to go.
Yep.
Commonwealth Day, which we've spoken about, is on Monday when they'll be at the service with the rest of the family at Westminster Abbey. The Duchess of Cambridge has a gala dinner at Buckingham Palace in celebration of Place to Be, the charity. They've got their 25th anniversary. And the Duchess of Cornwall is currently going to Ladies' Day at Cheltenham. Cheltenham is still happening, obviously. For now, but
Yeah.
I mean, they could take a call on that. It's obviously a big gathering with lots of people. They could decide that events like that can't go ahead, but at the moment it is. And that is everything I'm allowed to talk about.
It's everything you know about.
Yep.
And as we sit here and record this, we still don't quite know what it is that Meghan is doing for International Women's Day,
Yep.
because it's being kept under wraps.
Yeah, they did say...
It's not that we can't tell you, it's the fact we don't even know.
Yeah, we don't know. International Women's Day, yeah.
Yes. Anyway,
Yeah.
I don't know when you're listening to this or watching this, but you might already have the answers. But we'll talk about it in next week's podcast.
Yep.
Anything else next week? That's it?
That's it for the moment.
Yeah. Right. I think Commonwealth Day on Monday will be a pretty big moment. So, as I said, if we didn't do this weekly, where would we talk about all this stuff? So we've covered off Ireland, coronavirus, flags.
Sunday lunch.
Sunday lunch, the Commonwealth Day. Kind of done everything that we need to do this week. Thank you for keeping to watch and keeping to listen. We appreciate them. Subscribe to us on your podcast platform. Keep watching us on YouTube, and do continue to let us know what you like, what you don't like, by using the hashtag Royal Rota ITV. See you next week.